We're back.
Yay.
And it is finally time for the top 15 best movies of 2018. Obviously, number 15 to number 1. Tyler kicked us off last time. I'll kick us off this time, which means Tyler will have the dubious distinction of naming the final number 1 of 2018.
The best movie of the year.
There you go. Kicking things off with my number 15, best movie of 2018, it is A Star is Born, and that is, going right along the lines with getting a lot of recognition come nomination season and award season, which we're basically right in the thick of now. Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga, I think this is either the third or fourth time this movie has been made. I know it's been remade a couple of times, and I was just struck by how badly I wanted to criticize the lacking narrative, how badly I wanted to criticize the screenplay that was really not that great, and how much I wanted to criticize this romance that puts Romeo and Juliet's 2-week timeline to shame. Like, these guys go from dating to married in the span of what feels like about a week. So it's like, all right, I want to criticize these things, but to me, this movie was so emotionally evocative for me, I simply couldn't do it. And I drew a great parallel between this movie and another movie from a few years ago that I was so emotionally invested in, and I believe a movie you ultimately did not really like.
Yeah.
The Judge.
Boo!
Right? Exactly.
No, it was okay. The Judge was okay. It just felt like it manipulated people to the point that it was dirty.
Yes, and this movie, not in the same way, obviously, but it's just like, I feel like this is so emotionally manipulative, and I know I'm being manipulated, and I don't care. Because I'm just so into these characters. Bradley Cooper is immensely more talented than I gave him credit for as an actor, and I think he's got talent as a director as well, which, movie stars usually tend to make at least decent and serviceable directors. And again, to say nothing of Lady Gaga, who I mentioned her in my best actresses, I legitimately think this is like a career-making performance for her as an actress. So, Star is Born is my number 15.
Yeah, this is kind of the movie that we found out that Bradley Cooper could sing and Lady Gaga could act.
Yeah, exactly.
Lady Gaga is, definitely the most impressive part of that. I had no interest in this movie whatsoever. It just got so much buzz that I was like, yeah, I'll watch it. Screw it. And, I liked it quite a bit. Yeah. 8 out of 10. Doesn't make my list, but I gave it an 8 out of 10. It was great in some ways. Bradley Cooper's acting, I kind of just mumbled most of it.
Yeah.
I wasn't that impressed by his performance. At the end, he hit some higher notes that were more difficult and stuff. I didn't find his acting that fantastic, but it was certainly serviceable, and I know that was the guy's character and stuff.
Right.
But, I really enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I was going to. My number 15 is a cheater pick, but it's The Death of Stalin. I actually thought I avoided this for a little while because I thought it was just a serious drama.
Right.
Then I learned it was more like and I'm not the first one to say this, more like a Dr. Strangelove satire, and I was in. And It's not quite as good as Strangelove, but very few movies really are.
It would be tough.
But this movie was so funny for the first half of it.
Okay.
And it was so excitingly funny. It was just so excitingly funny. It kind of lost a little bit of that as it went on, but it never got boring. It's why it's not a little higher on my list, because if it would have kept the first half pace going, I think it probably would have been the funniest movie of the year. The casting was fantastic. The comedy was just on point. I really loved The Death of Stalin, which is amazing considering, like I said, I thought it was a completely different movie because I'd never seen a trailer or anything.
Right.
I just saw The Death of Stalin. I'm like, this will be a drag.
I love moments like that too, where it's just you think something is going to be one thing and it becomes something entirely different. And you're like, oh, I'm down with this.
It's excellent satire and comedy.
My number 14 best movie of 2018 is a movie that was already on his list previously. It is Incredibles 2. And I think in kind of the same way, like, I'm not as deep into being invested in the Incredibles property as a lot of other people were. Like, I mean, I didn't watch the first movie when it was in theaters. I watched it later on, and I was like, okay, I can see why people like this, but I'm not, like, knocking down the gates for a second one. Like, this is cool. I'm cool if this stands alone as its own whatever.
Yeah.
And then the second one came out, and the second one was really, really good. I think it nails its questions about, like, it asks questions about gender politics. I don't necessarily know that it intended to ask those questions, but it did ask some questions about, gender politics, and I'm sure there were some in there that were intentional. It nails the social commentary that it asks for, and it's just, I thought, remarkably well done. Like, Jack gets his own sort of sub-story, but Dash and the daughter are just kind of there. Whereas obviously Elastigirl and Mr. Incredible obviously are key elements to the story, but like, so some of it's just kind of there, but I was really, really, really enjoyed it, and if they were going to make a third one, I'd be there for the third one. So Incredibles 2 is my number 14.
Good pick. I also like that movie.
Yeah.
My number 14 is Won't You Be My Neighbor? One of the best documentaries of the year. Just kind of shines a light on Mr. Rogers' life and what he's done and how important he was and how important he kind of continues to be. Just a very uplifting documentary that doesn't really spend any time talking about dark shit. Like you watch a documentary, right? And even like Mr. Rogers, you're kind of expecting some like terrible stuff to come out.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, because like it's a documentary, so you're like, oh, what was he hiding?
Some of the children have a dark past.
Yeah,
It's like,
but none of that.
Right.
Thankfully.
Yeah, thankfully, you're right.
Yeah, it was a really good documentary. I think everyone should watch it. Even if you weren't a big Mr. Rogers fan, you should watch it because he was a beautiful man.
There you go.
Not a boy, a beautiful man.
My number 13 best movie of 2018 is Crazy Rich Asians. I already talked about it on a previous video here. Again, just a movie that, like, I invested in it so deeply, and I was surprised how much I wound up investing in the movie and in the characters and in exactly what was happening. The movie diverges like pretty significantly from the book in certain areas, but like in most cases, that really doesn't impact how much I did or didn't enjoy the movie. I can take something that is a property like that and say, I know this movie is someone's interpretation of those things. Like sort of the same thing with Annihilation, like it diverts from what's in the actual source material pretty significantly in some places, but it's like it doesn't impact the way I enjoy it. And again, I mentioned it, I think in a previous video as well, shout out to Awkwafina, who's better in this movie, the first 2 minutes in this movie, than she is in the entirety of Ocean's 8. And that's not even a criticism, I keep saying that, but it's not a criticism against Ocean's 8. She's just really good in this movie. So Crazy Rich Asians is my number 13.
There was another movie that I had no interest in seeing, but then I watched it and it was like quite good.
Yeah.
Really beautiful sets.
Yeah, well, this the production design and the set design and everything. Obviously, they're pretty damn bougie.
Yeah, they're still bougie dickheads.
Bougie.
Like that's the
Bougie.
thing. Like I still really enjoyed it, but it's hard for me to get past the fact of how bougie it all is, just on a moral level.
It's true. You're not wrong.
But it was still good. It had a heart and it was funny and yeah, it was well made. 8 out of 10.
There you go.
My number 13 is 8th Grade.
Uh-huh.
Directed by Bo Burnham, who I praised in a previous video, but he makes some of the most experimental stand-up I've ever seen in my life. And this isn't exactly an experimental marvel. This is kind of a little more toned back than his stand-up, but he still does some pretty cool things, and it just tells an interesting story about a kid growing up in these days and how YouTube is a big deal, and she's socially awkward, and just like a school drama for the most part, but really effectively done. It's with a great performance by Elsie Fisher.
I never really hooked into Bo Burnham's comedy.
It's very interesting. It's not even that it's always funny, although I do think it's funny. It's just that he clearly has grown up in like the digital age, and where like he's just doing a lot of neat stuff with like technology in his stand-up. Like he's not just a guy standing with a mic telling jokes, which is totally fine because that's mostly what I watch. But every now and then I like to see an artist who's kind of messing with the format a little. So while Eighth Grade doesn't really mess with the format, it's still a really well done movie.
Into the Dirty Dozen now. My number 12 best movie of 2018. I won't spend a ton of time on it because I've already talked about it in a previous video. Once again, it is Love, Simon. And I talked about Love, Simon within the context of like the coming of age movie and everything like that, and how there's a detritus at times of coming of age movies that fall somewhere in that realm of like, this is good to this is not very good. Like they usually all fall in here. Love, Simon is like up here. I talked before about how it's such a believable story. It's so believably performed, even when it, like I said, goes for it at the end. It gets a little hyperbolic and a little over the top at the end, but even then, it's still so grounded in and believable that it didn't exactly. I wasn't sitting there going, "Oh, that ending kind of takes it a little too far." So, Love, Simon inside the top 12 at number 12.
Yeah, you're right. The ending was overblown, but I was cheering for Simon, so at the same time I was a little forgiving of it.
Yeah.
I wrote in my review, like something I completely forgot about was like, damn, apologize to your sister. She was only trying to help you.
Yeah, it's true.
Not a criticism of the movie, just of the Simon character. Just apologize to your sister. She was only trying to help. My number 12 is Crime and Punishment. It was a documentary about... well, a couple things, but mostly about a bunch of cops exposing the truth about like illegal quotas and stuff.
Oh yes,
that was a thing that went on, and may still go on. Who knows? Because it's illegal and they're not supposed to do it. When I'm talking or rating or reviewing documentaries, I sometimes have a hard time because I'm not really viewing them in the same way that I am like a normal movie. Like I care less about the narrative. Like obviously you gotta tell your story in an interesting way, but I'm not looking at the shots and stuff being like, ooh, what a beautiful shot and whatnot. The information just has to shine light on an issue that's important or something that we didn't know, and this certainly kind of does that. And I have serious problems with the way that the police system operates, so to me it was kind of just like, yeah, see that? It's a very informative documentary about some really crappy things that some police do. And some are forced to do in order to keep their job. But the system as a whole is completely broken.
Ready to make some people unhappy?
Yes.
Right, my number 11, best movie of 2018, Solo, Star Wars story. Come at me. What Solo and Rogue One are not being given the credit for is Star Wars literally diversifying their portfolio. Alright? Rogue One is like a straight up war movie. Solo is a straight up buddy heist movie within the context of the Star Wars universe. And people can argue about whether that's a good thing for Star Wars or a bad thing for Star Wars. You can have these long overdrawn think pieces about how these movies are the worst thing to happen ever, and the same thing would be like, well, no, the new episodes are the worst thing to happen ever to Star Wars. At the end of the day, this was goddamn entertaining. This was such an entertaining, fun movie for me. And I love Emilia Clarke, and I thought she did a really good job with her character. And I love Woody Harrelson, and I thought he did an excellent job with his character. And at the end of the day, I just want to be entertained by Star Wars. Just let me be a fan of Star Wars, please. Please, fandom, I'm asking you to let me be a fan of Star Wars and just have fun with these Star Wars movies. That's what I did with Solo, and it's my number 11, just outside the top 10. Come at me.
I just wish that they would take the spin-offs and not just try to, like, rehash familiar characters. As much as I love, like, Rogue One especially, it's just like, did we need that story told? No.
Right. Did
we need this story told? No. I wish they would mine some different material for the spin-offs, because I just think that would be interesting, more interesting. Like, I'm excited for the Mandalorian TV show that they're making and stuff, because it's, like, different material. But, I mean, with that said, if they're like, Boba Fett movie, I'm there. But aside from that, like, they're good movies. Like I said in a previous video, I think they're better than the two mainline core episodes. Rogue One and Solo are better
There you
than
go.
The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, although Solo not by much, because I didn't love that movie, but I certainly was entertained by it. But Rogue One poops all over them. So my number 11 is Mandy, with Nicolas Cage. I love weird movies. I love revenge flicks. Mandy is both of those. Like, it's shot in such a weird way. The colors are so extreme that could either be amazing to you or incredibly off-putting, because the colors are very powerful in this. But yeah, just, like, I love watching Nicolas Cage go crazy. He plays an angry, broken man really well. The movie's incredibly memorable. I think there's a reason that people are kind of calling it one of the more, like, underrated films of the year, because, like, it really is one of the strangest, but one of the most exciting and just perfect for old Nick Cage. So yeah, go watch Mandy.
We now enter our respective top 10s with my number 10 best movie of 2018, and it's Creed 2.
Creed 2, the second Creed.
The second Creed, after the first Creed. I dug this a little bit more, I would say, than the first one.
Interesting.
It's like it's pretty competitive. If for no other reason, I think then, like, obviously I bought very heavily into the continuation of the story with the Drago family and the whole Rocky versus Drago feud taking on an entirely new wrinkle, an entirely new context, because you don't have the cultural context of Rocky IV, right? You don't have the Cold War, U.S. versus the Soviets. You don't have that this time. But now what you do have is you have the context of Russian boxing and the fallout from Drago's loss, and how he how he reacted to that was a reflection in how he raised his own son, and that was quite a good substitute for the context of the original one, which actually this franchise I think is pretty darn adept at finding these really great contexts for these things and weaving them throughout the story. Performance-wise, obviously excellent. You know, Tyler gave the nod to Sly Stallone during the Best Actor, and I mean, obviously, like, I mean, these movies have been so really well done, and Creed 2 is my number 10.
Yeah, I like, spoilers, there's the scene when, like, Rocky meets Drago in the restaurant.
Right.
It's like so perfectly done, because it didn't boil over into, like, fighting and stuff. It was just, like, tense but not overblown. Yeah, that was a good movie. Another good Rocky movie, even though it's not really a Rocky movie, but it is a Rocky movie, because it's always going to be a Rocky movie to me,
Exactly.
even if Rocky's not in it.
Still real to me, damn it.
My number 10 is The Guilty. Very small film about, you know, a guy trying to basically help a woman over the phone. Very good script, very good performance from the lead guy, because I gave him a nod in a previous video for that. A lot of twists, enough twists and turns, but not ridiculously so. Kept it really interesting right until the very end. Yeah, you should seek out The Guilty if you're okay with foreign movies, because this one is one of the best of the year that I've seen, anyway.
I'm sorry, I don't like to read my movies. Ugh, those people.
Indeed.
My number 9 best movie of 2018 harkens back to the greatest decade, and it's mid-90s. So mid-90s, obviously I talked about it before, an exploration of Californian culture, skateboarding culture in the mid-90s. Who'd have thunk it? And I think what I loved so much about this, aside from the performances, which obviously I gave Sonny Suljic my number 1, I believe it was, Best Actor this year, and praised Lucas Hedges as being an excellent kind of person to sort of play off of. This is nostalgia porn, but it's my kind of nostalgia porn. Like, it's the kind of movie that panders to me directly and my tastes. I almost feel like Jonah Hill made this movie aesthetically the way he made it specifically for me.
Yeah.
And I was so happy with this thing just from the very first frame until right up to the end when, spoilers, you get to see the movie that a particular character has been making for the entire movie. And it's like, oh man, this is so good. I would watch this as a short film. Like this, that would be great. And I think Jonah Hill did something really special with the movie. So that, again, very much pandering to me specifically, very much nostalgia porn, but I was all over it. So mid-90s is my number 9.
Everyone minds the 80s, so it's kind of nice when we get to mine the 90s.
Right.
Like, there was a Netflix show, too, I think it was last year.
Okay.
That was Everything Sucks.
Okay.
It took place in the 90s. I think it was called Everything Sucks.
Uh-huh.
I really enjoyed that show. But yeah, it's nice, because, like, the 80s are... We get so much of it that, all right, let's move on to the 90s and mine that for a little bit.
And we have enough separation from the... I mean, like, the 90s were almost 30 years ago now. So it's like, we have enough separation from it that, like, we can look at the 90s now the way we looked at the 60s and the 90s. Right? So it's like, okay, cool. Like, we can sort of put the sort of almost the rosy colored glasses on that time frame. And yeah, no, again, that movie just spoke to me directly in so many ways.
My number 9 is Hereditary. It shows up. There it is. Number 9. His favorite movie of the year. Jeez. Like, I really wish I would have rewatched this right before. Because there's, like, more specific details I'd like to get into. But basically, this movie is mostly a compelling family drama for the first hour with slightly ominous music and atmosphere. But because... And that could turn people off, because sometimes like a horror movie will take too much time building up a family dynamic or whatever before the real scares start to happen. And there's been movies this year that have done that and done it poorly. I didn't think Hereditary did that poorly. I think it actually earned its dread later on. I commented on the director shooting it so well, and I also commented on Toni Collette, how amazing she was. I just love how basically spoilers, I suppose. Spoilers. The family is basically has no free will throughout the entire movie. Like, even to the, like, and the director tells you this because, like, with the miniatures in the house and stuff, like, when you watch it back, you realize that they've been telling you all along that, like, this family has been played by that that demon king Payman or whatever that they talk about, like, the whole time. And then the end, which is, like, I suppose controversial to people because I don't think you like the end. I think you said. I think it's amazing because it, like, as a cult was kind of getting their way and stuff, they was playing, like, this triumphant almost sounding music that makes it seem like, oh, it's such a good thing, but it is literally the worst thing that could ever happen because now the demon is going to walk the earth and turn it into hell. I love Hereditary. I didn't know what I was going to think going into it, but I ended up really, really, really enjoying it and having almost no problems with it outside of, like, the occasional line that was delivered a little schlocky, but yeah, Hereditary.
I think you can't, in a movie like that, you can't half-ass your tone.
Yeah, there's no rest.
Right? It has to be very insistent and very constant. And yeah, no, that is a good thing. And there are elements here to latch, even for somebody like me that didn't like the movie, definitely elements to latch onto there is like, okay, this is good, or I get what you're going for there, or okay, it didn't work for me. My number 8 best movie of 2018 is Wildlife. I've talked about it relatively extensively so far in the awards, tapping Ed Oxenbould as a best actor and Carey Mulligan as a best actress and Paul Dano as a best director. So obviously, I enjoyed the movie very much. What I'd like to do in discussing this is I'd like to actually read my review just because I don't feel like it spoils too much and I feel like I can't say much more than I've already said without spoiling more. So I just want to read the review. Most of it centers around the performance of Carey Mulligan, but we're just going to say this anyway. Mulligan's wannabe traumatized midlife crisis is compelling. She's a cunt. A militant, arrogant, selfish, very easy to dislike character, and that's very true. She's also flawless in her performance. And on that level, she's matched by Ed Oxenbould, thrust into the role of the only functioning adult in his life. And then Jake Gyllenhaal returns, and it's game on. Their family dynamic is like the world's most well-performed car crash. It's horrible, but you can't look away. Even without my Jake Gyllenhaal bias, which I very, very, very firmly have, even without that, this is a tremendous movie. The fact that he's in it and is very good is only icing on top of the cake. Wildlife is my number 8.
My number 8 is Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Ooh.
Justin said some really positive things about it. I will add one simple thing to it, and this is true for the first one, but even more true for the second. I think Ant-Man, like, low-key has some of the best action sequences in any MCU movie. Because the small, big dynamic lends itself to some pretty cool fight choreography.
Yeah.
And now you've got the phasing, like with Ava as well. That kind of, like, adds more excitement to the dynamic fight scenes.
Very much so.
So that's the only thing I'll add. I really, really, really like this movie. More than I actually thought it would. It's very, very, very funny with some of my favorite jokes of the year. And Paul Rudd, always one of my favorite actors, always charming. Even if he's in a crappy movie, which this is not, I still always enjoy Rudd. He's my boyfriend.
There you go. And yeah, and I mean, this movie serves as the explanation to why Ant-Man is not really around in Infinity War, and gives the explanation as to why, as you've seen in the trailer now for Endgame, he's there and was not affected by this whole, the thing
that happened.
The thing that happened, which if you don't know what it is by now, watch more movies. So I really enjoy. I didn't know that you would have enjoyed Ant-Man and the Wasp that much, but that's very cool.
I sure did.
That was an unexpected addition to your list.
It's a very good movie.
My number 7 best movie of 2018 is Wes Anderson's Isle of Dogs. This was up there among my favorite, probably my favorite animated movie of the year for a long time this year. This just struck me as just so fantastically well done, and you can see my review of this movie on the Library Chess Productions YouTube channel. Just go back in some of the older videos. I think it was around April or May when I wound up seeing it, so it's a little while back there, but my review is there. Again, the Japanese aesthetic, I'm a sucker for it every single time. This animation style, I'm a sucker for it every single time. It's not as good as Fantastic Mr. Fox, which obviously is going to be the one that everyone holds up here on a pedestal, and for good reason. It's not as good as that movie. It doesn't have to be. The voice acting is tremendous. The hero's journey, the story here is excellent. Isle of Dogs struck me from beginning to end, and it's my number 7 best movie of the year.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it too. It's not on my list, spoilers, but I did really, or unless it was an honorable mention, I can't remember what I said. But it was really good. It was a really good movie. So my number 7 is The First Purge. I'm a big Purge fan ever since after the first one.
Right.
So from the second one on, when it embraced being an action movie, and I say the same thing every time I talk about The Purge, but ever since it embraced being like a horror-tinged action series, that's like over the top and militant in its satire and social commentary, because you can't miss what the Purge movies are trying to say.
No.
And some people are like, it's not very subtle. It's like, does it have to be? I would argue that it kind of has to be blunt sometimes, because some people just ain't gonna get it. This isn't as good as Anarchy or Election Year, but I mean, I still obviously really enjoy this one, and it is cool seeing the first Purge and seeing the masks and seeing the violence and the over-the-topness of it all. It's missing certain things that the ones before it had, because obviously the first Purge people aren't going to go quite as hog wild. Like, right. I missed the truck with the gigantic gun in the back that was in Anarchy. Maybe I take the Purge movies differently than most people, but I really like them for what I think they are trying to be. I mean, I could be completely wrong. They could just be really bad horror movies. Like, this is so scary. It's like, no, it's not. It's not scary. There's like a horror element to it, but it's not. They're not scary movies.
At this point, like you said, they're horror-tinged action rather than action-tinged horror.
Yeah. They remind me of, like, I say this about pretty much everyone, is like, they kind of remind me of, like, Escape from New York meets The Warriors.
My number 6 best movie of 2018 is Deadpool 2. So it's about equal to 2016's debut offering for me, except for the fact that they just got there in a bit of a different way. And I think they got there by being, 10 to 15% less funny in exchange for being 25% better movie, I would say. Bringing in a guy like Josh Brolin to play Cable, that was really smart casting. I thought he did a great job. Bringing in Zazie Beetz to be the Domino character, like that, she's a great new character in this universe. And again, it was more of what I wanted. Obviously, Reynolds Deadpool is Deadpool, so it's like he's tremendous there as well. And it was a lot more of exactly what I wanted. And even though it was the second time around, this universe, this Deadpool specific universe, still feels funny and fresh to me. It hasn't worn out even a little bit for me. So Deadpool 2 is my number 6.
Deadpool is a good movie. I don't like the character, though. My number 6 is Mission Impossible Fallout. I can't really... See, now we're at the point in the awards where a lot of movies have been talked about, so there's not a whole lot to add.
Right.
So everything he said is true, except I like the movie a lot more than he does. This is the best Mission Impossible since the first one. It has some of the most exciting action of any of them. Has a really great story that's a little confusing, but still. Has Henry Cavill, who's fun.
Yeah, he was a great ad.
Yeah, so he's really cool. I really like him now. But, yeah, Mission Impossible Fallout is a fantastic movie.
I think I kind of like Rogue Nation maybe a little bit more than this one. It would be they'd be really comparable.
Didn't ask your opinion.
I know, but it's there anyway. We now enter the top 5, the creme de la creme of 2018. My number 5 best movie of 2018 is A Quiet Place.
A Quiet Place.
Exactly. So, obviously, we've talked at length about Emily Blunt and how incredible she is. She's a superhero, I would say, in this movie, basically. She's so incredible. John Krasinski, so incredible performance-wise and direction-wise. And it's funny, I have a weird way, I think, of looking at this. First of all, this is one of the most unique horror concepts that I've seen in recent memory. So I'm like, okay, already, it's going to be more than noteworthy for that. And probably going to be on this list before I even started watching the movie. But I look at this movie as like this almost weird love letter from John Krasinski to Emily Blunt. I don't know necessarily, I don't think he wrote this with her specifically in mind. I think maybe he had hoped but I don't know whether it was, but I choose to look at it like this is a love letter from John Krasinski to Emily Blunt, because that character is a goddamn superhero in this movie. She's the driving force behind everything within the family unit, within what happens in the movie. He has her step on a nail and stay quiet and keep going and then give birth and still basically keep quiet. So she is just a monster in this movie in the best sense of the word, and it's my number 5.
It was an okay movie.
It was alright.
It was alright or whatever. I don't care.
It was a good time.
I don't really care too much for it, personally. My number 5 is Bad Times at the El Royale. I get the feeling that it's popping up on his. So I just want to say one thing. One important thing. It didn't take long before I realized that I wouldn't know what to expect in this movie. And that's very important. Like, the twists and turns of this. Like, I was on edge because I can't remember the exact sequence, but it was early on where something happened. I was like, oh, really? Didn't see that coming? Oh, it was the death of one character. And I thought, all bets are off now.
Yeah.
And that was exciting because you don't always get that. Or you usually don't get that in movies. And that was, I think, the biggest strength of the writing. I mean, the rest of the movie is really good, but I'll let him talk about it if it comes up. But yeah, that's the one thing I want to say is that the writing was very unpredictable, and I really appreciated that.
My number 4 best movie of 2018 is Black Panther. BP. And I know that this movie, I think, left some people feeling a little isolated, maybe? I don't know if that's necessarily the best way to put it. I know this movie left some people cold. This thing, I think, gave me basically everything that I wanted from this movie, short of when Killmonger had Ulysses, I wanted him to behead him. Like, just right in front of... that was like... I was waiting for it, too. I'm like, he's going to behead him right here, and I might squeal. I'd be so happy if that happened. So, short of that, I'm pretty sure this movie gave me every single beat that I wanted this movie to give me, including the delightfully insane Andy Serkis performance that for a long time was going to be on my best performances of the year. And I thought, well, geez, if I can also get to see, the live-action Jungle Book, which he does some mocap stuff in, he'd probably be on here. Unfortunately, I didn't get to. I thought Coogler did a fantastic job here. I thought basically everyone, performance-wise, was excellent in this movie. When I first saw this, I was like, that might be a masterpiece. I might actually legitimately call that a masterpiece. And up until about a week or two left in the year, I had this up at number 2. It did fall off a little bit, obviously still well within the top 5. Black Panther, my number 4.
The third act, not very inspired, and that really hurt the movie for me because I just don't think that he nailed making, like, all right, I think there's room. I think there's wiggle room for superhero movies to try something a little different, for sure. But you still have to nail the fact that it's a superhero movie, so people want like a fun third act. And I don't think Coogler really pulled that off. I think the battles were not that exciting, especially Black Panther versus Killmonger. They had like a better fight earlier. But anyway, however, that's really my only real negative. I mean, it did hurt it. Coogler nailed like the social commentary aspects of it and embraced like black culture in a way that, it would make sense considering he's black. And I like the way that they married like North American black culture with like black culture from over there and stuff. Like they kind of meshed it together. And I thought that was really well done. Like I love the movie in a whole bunch of ways. I just don't love the third act. So like when I'm sitting there just kind of being like that took it from like maybe an 85 for me or a 90 even to like a 75. And it's only because of the third act. Everything else in that movie is really well done. My number 4 is Avengers. Arguably the best experience in any movie this year, really. Like, it was so exciting from beginning to end. It fixed 2 problems that the MCU has had, like crappy villains. Fixed that in a big bad way. It also had stakes, even though we know that there's going to be a lot that's undone later. Who gives a crap? We're living in the now. It did have stakes. A lot of people died.
Yeah.
It basically was basically a perfect MCU movie.
Yeah.
They did everything they needed to do. So, yeah, that's my number 4. Infinity War. I rhymed.
Nice. Well done. My number 3 best movie of 2018 is one that he already mentioned. It's Bad Times at the El Royale. I was so...
Good times at the movies.
Yeah, exactly. Good times at the movies. And I gotta fully admit, I think I kind of snubbed Drew Goddard in the direction category. I think it was more so for the tone that the movie sets, because, man, this thing sets a tone, and it sticks with it. Kind of like you said when you were talking about, you're like, a character dies, and you're like, okay, all bets are off here. I don't know what's coming, and I'm very excited about that, and that contributes to the tone that this movie sets. And again, it sets it, and it damn well sticks with it for the vast majority, probably the entire runtime of the whole movie. It so successfully intertwines all these different stories, like seamlessly intertwines these stories and how they wind up relating and connecting to one another. There's a sea of great performances in here, but as I mentioned before, and I believe we both mentioned, Chris Hemsworth's cult leader character is essentially the one that really stands out to me. I'm very, very much on board with basically everything that Drew Goddard does from here on out. Bad Times at the El Royale was an absolute home run for me that I was not expecting to be a home run. I figured it would be like, okay, that was a solid stand-up double. I didn't really think this was going to be, basically one of the... Well, not basically, it is one of the best movies that I saw all year, and it rings in at number 3.
So I expected to love it. I was really high on that. And I actually think Jeff Bridges was the best performance, but I do really like Hemsworth as well. And one other thing, I definitely agree that like the direction was really good. For sure, like if you would have picked him as like one of the best directors, I wouldn't have argued with it. However, I think the strength is the writing more so than the directing. In this case, I give so much love to the writing in this movie. It's like, yeah, the writing is the star here for me, even though everything else around it is awesome. Okay, my number 3 is Deadpool 2. It was hard for me to pick like Infinity War or Deadpool. I think it's just Deadpool bias that makes me put Deadpool ahead of Infinity War.
Could be.
But like I like seeing this character more. Even though like it really didn't do anything that different with Deadpool, whereas Infinity War did fix a lot of stuff about the MCU. But yeah, like you said about less comedy versus like better movie for this one, I agree with that in a sense, but I would probably have worded it more like less comedy, more action, which made sense. And I called it because of like who directed it. He came from like John Wick, I think.
Yes.
So like I expected more action heavy this time around. That was something I was saying. I was like, it's probably not going to be as funny, but it was really funny. But the action's going to be better. And I don't often predict things right, but I certainly predicted that.
Yeah, you kind of nailed that one.
And but yeah, I really love Deadpool 2. I hope they don't saturate Deadpool though, because obviously it's a big money maker. But I don't need to see Deadpool and everything because I want the character to stay fresh, and cool.
I wouldn't mind like a single like if Deadpool cameos in Endgame, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I don't want to see him cameo in the next standalone Thor movie.
Yeah.
Right? Like I mean I want to see like if he wants to cameo there, great. But like you say, oversaturation of the character is definitely a concern here.
Yeah, because they're kind of building a lot around him now because it's so successful and he's such a good character that I hope they don't go too crazy on it. But I mean, there's worse things in the world than too much Deadpool.
Before I reveal my number 2 movie, Tyler, I got to ask you a question.
Oh, good.
If I told you that a movie was inventive, visually astonishing, emotionally evocative, and impeccably voice acted, what studio do you think would have made that movie?
The one that made Peter Rabbit.
Damn. My number 2 movie of the year, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. And I legitimately feel all of those things about that movie. I think the technical execution in this movie is worthy of some kind of an Oscar. I don't know whether it will be a visual effects Oscar, whether it would be... I legit think, and I don't know, maybe you disagree with me on this, and maybe this would be a point of debate. I would really like to see them give an Oscar specifically for voice acting. I loved the ensemble voice acting performance here. They pegged smart choices to play some of these characters. Obviously, shout out to our boy Nick Cage for being Spider-Man Noir. I just loved every bit of this movie so much. The only... if I had one criticism of the movie, it would be, even in 2D, I found some of the visuals are going to be like... Obviously, this had the sensory warning on it about people who are prone to epilepsy, but... There were even just some elements there where I don't know if it was in the transition from 2D to 3D or what it was, but there were some things that just looked almost too blurry.
Yeah.
Or just stuff that looked out of focus or whatever. And I know that obviously the movie was going for a particular artistic style and maybe that's just lent to it in that way. I don't know. But that would be literally my only criticism of this movie. I thought this is such a home run. This is such an achievement, and I can't believe Sony made it. So, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, or Spoderman Into the Spoderverse, my number 2.
My only criticism of the movie is that it's a turd. I actually put it at number 27.
You did.
So clearly not a turd. But, yeah, good movie.
But clearly not a diamond either.
My number 2 is A Quiet Place, which was a front runner for like the whole year.
Right.
If I could separate myself from certain things, I'd probably say that it's probably the number 1 movie of the year, but I can't. But A Quiet Place is so wonderful. It's so weird for me to have a horror movie that would have really in almost any other year been number 1. Because it's like, I love it. Like, it is legitimately in my top 5 horror movies of all time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I know it's so early to declare that, but it's just as I feel now, I think it would be like a top 5. it's pretty much a masterclass in every way. Some people want to pick apart like certain elements of the plot I've seen, like especially like the baby part. Like, why would you get pregnant? It's like, Jesus Christ, it's a movie.
Right.
And did it not lead to some of the most tense stuff ever? Like, as soon as you find out that she's pregnant, like, as soon as I found out that she was pregnant, all I could think of was, holy crap, in this world, like, she didn't even have the kid yet, and I was like, how tense is this?
Right.
Because you know what's coming. Like, a baby ain't gonna stop crying.
Even in a world like that, are you really going to expect John Krasinski to not have sex with Emily Blunt? Really?
Like, all
Really?
all it really takes is, like, having sex and then being like, oh shit, you're pregnant. It's like, what are we gonna do, have an abortion? Right. I don't know, like, I'm sure there's, like, little things that you could pick apart. I haven't thought that much about it. But I'm sure there is, but, like, it's a movie.
Right.
It's not, most movies aren't perfectly written without any debatable plot points.
Right.
So, yeah. A Quiet Place is my second favorite movie of the year.
Now it's time. Our number one best movies of 2018, respectively. I will begin with mine. My number one best movie of 2018. Stop me if you've heard this before. It's Avengers: Infinity War. And
you
it's
said before, you rhymed as well.
There you go. There you go. Take out of the equation that we've waited for this movie for 10 years. It's like, take that out of the equation entirely. They fixed the biggest glaring problem with the MCU, which is the villains have been, outside of a couple of instances, pretty weak. And they fixed that by having one of the greatest villains in a long, 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 long time. So they fixed all that. You have all of these characters who, you've been invested in for varying degrees of time, but you have all of these characters, essentially, all of them, that now have to come together and are fighting this common foe. That's not an easy feat, obviously, based on what has happened in previous movies. This movie, I would argue, has the best ending of any of the MCU movies. I think it was rich and vibrant storytelling that obviously we've only seen this much of. We got all of this left to go yet, and we get that this year, and we're so spoiled as fans of superhero movies. Like, there were legitimately, 7 superhero movies this year that I would at least say were very good movies. Not just in the MCU, but there's probably at least 7, if not more. Avengers: Infinity War tops my list. My number one best movie of 2018.
And that hasn't changed since you saw it.
Has not changed since I saw it. It's been that way since, I think it was May when that movie came out. Or late April, early May. So, I mean, the number one spot's been spoken for there. It's like, you know what? The kings stay the king. The tie goes to the runner. You gotta beat this movie in order to take that spot. And for me, nothing did.
And for me, my front runner was A Quiet Place, and that was my favorite movie for even longer than Infinity War. But then Creed 2 came out, and the bias is strong.
The bias is strong.
Like, I'm not even kidding when I say, like, any other year, except for, like, maybe if, like, Harmony Korine releases a movie, or the year of The Dark Knight. Any other year would have been my favorite movie, at least in recent years,
Hmm?
And that's sad, because I really wanted to give it to A Quiet Place. I was really rooting for it. Like, Creed 2 is exceptional. But like, when I think about it, it's not really one of the best Rocky movies, but I still really like it. But I didn't think it was going to be as good as it was. Because I didn't feel we needed it. And then they were like, well, they're going to have the Dragos. And I'm like, well, that's cool, but that could be really hokey, but it wasn't.
Right.
And like, the director, it wasn't Coogler. It was just some guy that I don't think has like a great track record, or I can't remember who it is. So like, it didn't really have a whole lot going for it. That would, like, I kind of feared that it would be like, oh, what a stinker Rocky felt.
Right.
But it really wasn't. Like, it was written well, it was directed well. They hit the musical cues, played the Rocky music when appropriate, so they nailed that. I would never argue that there isn't an intense bias in my pick. So basically, my number one has been spoken for since the minute the movie was announced.
Right.
But but still, gotta be honest. You know, like you tell me, like you can watch any movie again this year. It's gonna be Creed 2.
And with that, ladies and gentlemen, Creed and Avengers: Infinity War are #1 best movies of 2018, and we can officially announce that the 2018 Library Chess Productions Movie Awards are officially closed.